Today on No Mac No Cheese, we're going to talk about how to replace a foot on one of the Vivitar 285s. If you use these with any regularity, you're going to run into this problem. And they're very weak, just made of plastic, and eventually it's going to break. Good news is they're very easy to replace. There's just two screws on the side that hold this entire foot on. Parts you'll need this replacement hot shoe. You can get it on eBay for usually less than $5. It's all metal construction, real durable. Once you replace it, you're never going to have to do it again. On this, it's a screw mount on the bottom, there's a test button on the back, and a standard female PC port on the front. Next thing you'll need is a small Phillips screwdriver. A good jeweler's screwdriver will work. A soldering gun. Always a good idea to use something like a muffin tray to protect your table there. Solder, of course, and a pair of scissors is going to come in handy. You also need some electrical tape, which I'm not showing here. Alright, on either side of the foot there's two screws. You're going to use your Phillips screwdriver there and unscrew those. They're fairly long, and you want to use these. You're going to need these to put the replacement shoe on, so hang on to them. Good use for your cookie sheet there. Now there's a lot of springs and everything in there. Depending on how bad your foot broke, it may pop out. The only thing you'll need from the original foot are the two screws. There's a little plastic piece on the front which holds that in, so you have to pop that out slightly. There we go. When you get that to break loose, there's four wires. A red, a black, which are the two that we're going to use, and a white and a green. The white and the green are only used for the test button. On the original foot, we don't need them, so we could actually just snip these, but I'm going to show you how to desolder them. You can see all those wires are actually attached to little copper pieces in there with solder. To remove those, just use your soldering gun, put a little pressure on the wire by pulling on the foot, and you're going to want to heat the solder up until it melts, and then it should pop right off. Sometimes if you stick the tip of the soldering gun underneath, it'll pop off a little easier. You can see I'm doing that here. I'll turn it around a little bit. And just stick your tip right underneath the wire and pull up while you're heating it up, and that'll melt the solder just enough. Now these flashes are actually triggered just by short-circuiting those two wires. The red and the black wires, which are thicker, if I put a battery in them and I just touch those red and black wires together, you see the battery's on there. I'm just going to tap them together and you'll see the flash go off. So all you have to do is just short those out. Now the green and the white wire will do the same thing, but since we're only going to use the two, we want to clean those up and kind of protect them so they don't accidentally touch and make our flash go off when we don't want it to. So to do that, what we're going to do is I'm going to take my scissors here. I'm going to trim off the exposed wire on the end there, so it's just insulation. And then to protect it a little bit more, I'm going to get a little bit of electrical tape and just kind of wrap those wires up so that they're not bouncing around. I'm not looking for anything major. For the most part, they're protected anyway. Just want to kind of cover them up and keep them together and out of the way. There you go. As you can see, it's just a quick wrap job. And I'm going to trim the end of that. Okay, so now that we have that done, on the inside of this replacement foot, there's two little tabs. one in the center and one on the edge, and those match up to the edge in the center right there, just like a regular shoe. And we're just going to solder the black and the red wires. It doesn't really matter which direction it goes. If you want to do it, I always like to do the red in the center and the black on the edge. Now if your tabs are too close, you can use your screwdriver and loosen one up, turn it to a different direction. I also like to lay them a little flatter. They're fairly thin, so you can just bend them with your thumb. Now a good trick, use your screwdriver and rough up the surface of those tabs. That'll help the solder stick to the surface a little easier. Now our solder, normally when you solder two wires together, you want to heat up the joint and then add the solder. When you're soldering to a surface like this, I find it's easier if I put the solder right on the tip and then let the flux, the rosin, burn off, which is that smoke that you see. I'm going to let it heat up, and then I'm going to just kind of put that little drip right on the surface here, that little tab. Now, it's not as strong as a regular solder joint, but there's not a lot of movement in this, so it's worked for me. Put a little bit more on there. I'm going to build that up until you can see here it's thick enough to hold, to kind of entrap one of those wires. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that wire in there. Steph's going to help me here in just a second by positioning this foot where I need it. I'm going to lay that wire right on that little glob of solder that I put in there. And then I'm going to heat it up just until that solder melts and traps that wire. Now if you're having trouble getting it to stick, you can go back and forth with it. Really, you just want to get it to be on there pretty solid. We're not looking for the ultimate joint. Once it's in place, we're bolting this thing back together, so it's not going to move a lot. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing for the edge, or the black wire here. Get enough solder in there, let the flux burn off. Put my glob on the tab there. And what you're not going to see, I'm going to turn it around so you can see it a little bit better. And again, do the same thing. I'm going to put the wire on the glob, heat everything up until it kind of entraps that wire, and then pull it off, let it cool. Okay, that's all there is to that. Now what we have to do is, here's our wiring, and you just kind of tuck everything in there and put that foot back on there. I always like to make sure my button's in the back. Then those two screws that we originally had from the original foot, we're going to put those down in there, and the little locking screw there has actually got a little divot to allow the screwdriver to fit down in, so lining that up sometimes can help. Okay, just get that down in there, and I like to go back and forth and making sure that there's equal torque on both, so we're not bending the metal inside there. And I don't want to crank it down too hard, just enough to bring it snug and make sure it's not going to loosen up. So that's really all there is to it. Just hit your test button to make sure it's working. And now you got an all metal foot, pretty much guaranteed never to break, with a thumb screw to lock it in place, and you're good to go. Hope this helps. See you next time.